It was 7:30 on a Tuesday morning when Hale Brennick walked into the boardroom of Callaway and Strath Financial Group, carrying a mop bucket and a bottle of Descaler. He wasn't supposed to be there that early. His shift started at 8, but the night crew had left the executive floor in rough shape after some client dinner that ran until midnight, and his supervisor had called him in at 6 with a tight voice that told him there was no room to say no. So Hale came. He always came. He set the bucket near the far wall and started on the windows first, the way he always did. Floor to glass, working in slow, horizontal strokes, watching the city of Toronto wake up below him on King Street. The CN Tower caught the first pale light of the morning. A streetcar ground around the corner on Front. He watched a woman in a red coat stop to check her phone, then look up at the sky like she was making a decision, and then walk on. Hale was 29 years old. He had been cleaning the 42nd floor of this building for 3 years. He knew the layout the way he knew his own apartment, which outlets tripped when you ran 2 floor polishers at once, which section of the main corridor had a slight grade that sent the mop water east if you weren't watching, which partner liked his office touched, and which one left a handwritten note on his door that said, "Please, skip me this week. I'll handle it myself." He knew the building. The building did not particularly know him. That was fine. Hale was used to invisible. He had come to Toronto from a small place outside Sudbury, where his mother had worked the checkout at a grocery store for 22 years, and his father had run a snowplow contract until his back gave out. He'd had a scholarship to Ryerson, business and economics, 2nd year, strong grades. But his mother had her first stroke when he was 20. And his second option was to go home and help or stay and let a 61-year-old woman try to manage alone in a house that suddenly had 17 steps between her bedroom and the bathroom. He went home. He stayed 2 years. When things stabilized, when his younger sister Bex was old enough to check in regularly, when his mother had a care worker coming 3 mornings a week through the provincial program, Hale came back to the city. But the scholarship was gone. The seat was gone. The window had closed the way windows close when you step away from them long enough. So he cleaned. He had a night course in financial analysis he was slowly working through at George Brown. He had a notebook full of calculations he ran on his lunch breaks. He had opinions, strong ones, quietly held, about the quarterly reports that came through the shredder on the 42nd floor, the ones with the corner torn off that didn't quite cover the company name. Nobody asked him for those opinions. Until the morning of February the 14th, when a man named Aldrich Strath walked into his own boardroom at 7:45 and found the floor already half cleaned, and a young man in gray maintenance coveralls standing at the window with a squeegee, looking out at the city like he owned it. Aldrich Strath was 53. He was the founding partner of Callaway and Strath, which managed roughly $4 billion in private client assets. He had been named to report on Business Magazine's top 50 most influential Canadians 3 years running. He had a presence that most people described afterward using words like sharp or heavy, the kind of person who made a room feel smaller without doing anything specific. He stopped in the doorway. "Who let you in here?" he said. Hale turned. "Maintenance," he said. "Early call. I'll be done in 10. Strath walked to the head of the table and set down his bag. "Leave the windows. I need the table clear and the screens up." "Table's done," Hale said. "Screens take about 2 minutes." Strath looked at him the way certain people look at service workers. Not angry, not unkind exactly, but with a particular quality of not quite focusing, like looking at furniture. "You can go," he said. "I've got to pull the overnight litter from the bin near the credenza," Hale said. "Organic material from the dinner last night. I leave that. You'll smell it by 9. Something crossed Strath's face. Not annoyance. More like mild surprise that the furniture was still talking. "Fine," he said. He pulled out his chair. "Be quick about it." Hale crossed to the credenza, pulled the bin, tied the liner. While he did, he noticed the presentation deck open on Strath's laptop, face up, unguarded, the kind of carelessness that came from 30 years of being the most important person in every room. He wasn't trying to read it. He wasn't even particularly curious, but numbers had a way of catching his attention. The way a bright color catches a child's, involuntary, immediate. And what he saw in the top right quadrant of that slide stopped his hands for exactly 3 seconds. He finished with the bin. He picked up his bucket. He walked toward the door. He was almost through it when he stopped. He stood there for a moment with his back to the room. Later, he would think about that moment, the particular quality of it, the weight of choosing to turn around or keep walking, and he would not be able to explain what made him turn. He just did. "Mr. Strath," he said. Strath looked up. "I'm sorry to bother you," Hale said, "but the depreciation figure on that slide, the one in the top right, I think there might be an error." The room went very quiet. Strath's expression didn't change at first, then it changed quite a lot. "I beg your pardon?" "The depreciation schedule," Hale said. He kept his voice level. "If I'm reading it right, the declining balance rate's been applied to the gross asset value instead of the net. It's a small thing, but depending on the client's tax position, it could—" "I'm sorry." Strath leaned back in his chair. The movement was slow and deliberate, the way certain gestures are slow and deliberate, designed to let you know a certain kind of patience is being exercised. "You're cleaning staff?" "Yes, and you're reading my financial presentation." "I wasn't trying to," Hale said. "You're not qualified to analyze this material," Strath said. His voice had shifted into something that wasn't quite contempt, but was close enough to share a postal code. And frankly, the idea that a maintenance worker is commenting on a presentation being given to a room full of chartered accountants in, he checked his watch. 45 minutes is a little much, don't you think? Hale said nothing. "I appreciate the enthusiasm," Strath said in the tone of a man who appreciated nothing of the kind. "Close the door on your way out." Hale closed the door. He wheeled his bucket to the service elevator and pressed the button for sub-level 2. The elevator hummed. The doors opened. He pushed the bucket inside and stood watching the numbers descend. Here is what he did not do. He did not go back. He did not press the issue. He did not call anyone, or file a report, or do anything that might draw more attention to a conversation that had already cost him more dignity than he wanted to think about. He went to the break room. He made himself a coffee. He sat for the remaining 12 minutes of his break and looked at the wall. Then he went back to work. The presentation was scheduled for 9:15 in boardroom A. Hale knew this because he had been told to have the room set up by 8:45 water carafes, pens. The particular brand of mint Strath kept in the credenza drawer because one of the senior clients had a thing about fresh breath in enclosed spaces. He set it all up. He aligned the notepads. He was back in the service corridor by 9:10. He was emptying a recycling bin near the east corridor when he heard the voices. Not the words, just the quality of them. The particular shift that happens in a room when something goes wrong. He kept working. It was 9:47 when Janine from Client Services found him outside the server room with a replacement light fixture. She was 38, had worked on the 42nd floor for 11 years, and had a way of speaking that was always slightly faster than the situation required. "The presentation," she said. "There's a problem." Hale looked at her. "The depreciation model," she said. "Strath's walking them through it, and one of the clients, the Mercier account, the main one, his portfolio manager just flagged something about the asset values being wrong." Hale said nothing. Janine stared at him. "You knew," she said. "I mentioned something to Mr. Strath this morning," Hale said carefully. "He wasn't interested." Janine looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at the light fixture in his hands. Then she looked at him again. "Come with me," she said. "Janine, I'm serious," she said. "Right now. Come." He set the fixture down. He followed her. The boardroom had the particular atmosphere of a contained crisis. Everyone very still, very controlled, in the way that professionals are still and controlled when something has gone visibly wrong, and nobody wants to be the person who moves first. There were 8 people around the table. 4 of them were from the Mercier account, their portfolio manager, a tax specialist, and 2 principals. 4 were from Callaway and Strath, including Strath himself. Strath was standing at the head of the table. He was not a man who looked uncertain, but he looked close to it. On the screen behind him was the slide, the one with the depreciation figures. Janine opened the door. 8 heads turned, and for a moment something moved across his face that Hale couldn't entirely read. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Janine said. "This is Hale Brennick. He flagged an issue with that model this morning." The Mercier portfolio manager, a woman named Turcotte, 50s, silver-haired, the particular calm of someone who had seen enough to not be rattled by much, looked at Hale directly. "What did you flag?" she said. Hale stood in the doorway in his maintenance coveralls. He was aware of what he looked like. He was aware of all 8 faces. He was aware of Strath standing at the head of the table with an expression that Hale could now read clearly enough. Not anger, not embarrassment, but the very specific discomfort of a man who had made a mistake and was now watching the proof of it walk through his boardroom door. The declining balance rate, Hale said, it's been applied to the gross asset value instead of the net book value if the assets were partially depreciated in previous years, which they were, looking at the schedule headers. Then the base is wrong. The depreciation for the current period is overstated, which understates the taxable income, which means the projected tax shelter is inflated, Turcotte said. Yes, Hale said, by my rough count, somewhere around 240,000 for the current year. Compounded over the 4-year model, it's significant, Turcotte said. Yes. The room was very quiet. One of the Mercier principals, older, heavyset, the kind of man who wore his wealth in his stillness rather than his clothing, leaned forward slightly. Who are you? He said. Hale Brennick, Hale said. I work maintenance here. The man looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked at Strath. Then he looked back at Hale. Can you walk us through the corrected model? He doesn't have access to. Strath started. I can work it through manually, Hale said, if you have a whiteboard. There was a whiteboard on the south wall. Someone uncapped a marker and held it out to him. Hale walked to the board. His handwriting was neat. He had always had neat handwriting. His mother had insisted on it the way she insisted on a few specific things, quietly and repeatedly until they became part of him. He wrote the corrected depreciation formula first, then the net book value calculation, then walked through each year of the 4-year model in sequence, annotating as he went, pausing twice when the tax specialist from Mercier asked a clarifying question. He answered both questions correctly. When he finished, he set the marker in the tray. He stepped back. He looked at what he had written on the board with the detached attention of someone proofreading, not performing. That's the corrected model, he said. The projected tax position is lower than the original, but it's accurate. I can go through the assumptions if... No, said Turcotte. She was looking at the board with the expression of someone making a decision. No, that's enough. She looked at her principal. Something passed between them. Then she looked at Strath. Strath was looking at the whiteboard. He did not say anything for a moment. The room had the quality of held breath, everyone waiting, because the founding partner of the firm was the center of gravity in the room, and no one moved until he did. Then Strath looked at Hale. Really looked at him, not the furniture look from earlier. Something different, thank you, Mr. Brennick, he said. The words came out with a weight to them that told Hale they had cost something. Of course, Hale said. He walked out of the boardroom. He picked up the light fixture from where he had left it in the corridor. He went back to work. The rest of the shift was ordinary. He finished the east wing by 11. He had lunch in the sub-level break room. A sandwich his sister Bex had texted him to remember to eat, because she tracked these things. And he sat with his George Brown workbook open on the table and finished a problem set on capital cost allowance classes that he had been working through for 3 days. He did not think about the boardroom, or he tried not to. He was mostly successful. At 2:15, Janine appeared in the doorway of the break room. Strath wants to see you, she said. Hale looked up from his workbook. Now, she said. He closed the workbook. He followed her to the elevator. On the way up, she said, how did you know that? About the depreciation. George Brown, he said. Night course. Financial analysis. 2nd semester. She looked at him. 2nd semester. It's a pretty foundational concept, he said. She made a sound that might have been a laugh. Don't say that in front of Strath, she said. Strath's office was on the north corner of the 42nd floor. It had the kind of view that firms like his had offices with, the lake, the islands, the particular pale winter light that came off the water on a February afternoon. He was standing at the window when Hale came in, hands in his pockets, looking south. He did not turn immediately. Hale stood inside the door and waited. The Mercier account, Strath said, still facing the window, has been with this firm for 17 years. The current principal's father signed the original management agreement. It represents approximately 12% of our AUM. He paused. We nearly cost them a significant tax liability, and more importantly, we nearly cost them their trust in this firm, which would have cost us considerably more. He turned. He looked at Hale the way he had looked at him in the boardroom. Not furniture. Something else. something that had the quality of a man recalibrating, which Hale suspected was not something Aldrich Strath did often or comfortably. "I dismissed you this morning," Strath said. "Yes," Hale said. "That was an error." Hale said nothing. Strath said, "Who you are, not what it says on the roster. Who you actually are." So Hale told him. Not everything. Not the texture of it, not what it had felt like to sit in his mother's kitchen in Sudbury watching the scholarship expire while she learned to open a can with her left hand because her right wasn't reliable anymore. He gave Strath the outline. Ryerson, the stroke, 2 years home. George Brown, night course, 3rd year now. The notebook, which he did not mention, the opinions, which he mentioned carefully. Strath listened without interrupting, which Hale had not expected. When he finished, Strath was quiet for a moment. "You have the CFA in mind," he said. "Eventually," Hale said, "I need to finish the George Brown program first. And I need to work while I do it, so it's slow," Strath said. "Slow?" Hale agreed. Strath nodded. He walked to his desk. He sat down. He put both hands flat on the surface, which was a gesture Hale had no framework for. "I'd like to offer you a position," Strath said. "Entry-level analyst. Junior, full training support. CFA study costs covered as a firm benefit. You'd be starting from the ground floor in terms of the role, but I suspect you've been operating from the ground floor for some time, and it hasn't slowed you down materially." Hale looked at him. "You can think about it," Strath said. "I don't need to think about it," Hale said. Something moved through Strath's expression, not quite a smile, but adjacent. "No," he said, "I didn't think you would. There is a thing that happens when the world catches up to someone who has been running ahead of it quietly for a long time. It doesn't always feel like triumph. Sometimes it just feels like exhaling, like something wound tight finally releasing, not with noise, but with relief." Hale Brennick called his mother that evening from his apartment in Parkdale. He sat on the edge of his bed with the phone against his ear and listened to her ask if he had eaten. He had, thanks to Bex, and whether it was cold, it was February, and whether he was sleeping, mostly, and then he told her. She was quiet for a moment. "You told him there was an error," she said. "And he told you to leave." "Yes," Hale said. "And then you had to go back and fix it anyway." "Essentially." Another pause. He could hear the television in the background, the evening news, which she always watched with the volume slightly too high. "Good," she said. He laughed. It came out surprised, the way real laughs do. "Good? You didn't let it go," she said. "I raised you not to let the wrong thing stand just because it's easier. You didn't. That's good." He sat with that for a while after they hung up. 3 weeks later, Hale Brennick showed up to the 42nd floor in a different kind of clothes. He had a desk now, not on the partner's row, not even close, but in a real office, with a real computer and a real login and a real email address with the firm's name in it. Janine walked him through the internal systems on his first morning. She showed him the shared drives, the client management platform, the meeting room booking calendar. At one point, she pulled up the maintenance roster on an admin screen and, without saying anything particular, clicked into his old profile and marked it as inactive. He watched her do it. "How does it feel?" she said, without looking at him. "Strange," he said honestly. Good strange or bad strange? He thought about the mop bucket, the squeegee, the service elevator, the way the building had not particularly known him for 3 years. "Good," he said, "just strange." On his second Friday, Strath passed Hale's desk in the late afternoon. Coat on, briefcase in hand, the particular speed of a man who had already decided where he was going. He stopped for a moment. He looked at the screen Hale was working on, a client file, a depreciation schedule, as it happened, different client, same fundamental question. Gross versus net base, the same category of error that had a way of occurring when analysts applied formulas without thinking through the asset's history. Strath looked at the screen, then at Hale. "Anything of note," he said. "Not this time," Hale said. "It's clean." Strath nodded once. "Good," he said, and walked on. Hale turned back to the screen. Outside the window, the city of Toronto stretched south toward the lake. The same view, from a different floor, a different angle, different clothes. The CN Tower stood where it always stood. A streetcar turned somewhere below. The late February light cut across the water and made it look, for a moment, almost warm. He had a lot to learn. He knew that without anyone needing to tell him. But there are people who walk into rooms and are not seen. Not because they are invisible, but because the people in those rooms have decided in advance what is worth seeing. Those people move through the world carrying what they carry, doing the work, waiting for nothing in particular, because waiting implies someone is coming to let you in. Hale Brennick hadn't waited. He had turned around in a doorway at 7:48 in the morning and said the true thing, even when it cost him. Especially because it cost him, and sometimes. Not always, not neatly, not without the kind of years that leave marks on a person. The true thing is enough.